Alright, everyone. Hello. Oh, good to see you all. It's been a little while. Although some of you were here for my live stream yesterday, so. um, but yeah, let me get to my channel so I can just keep up with the comments. Or try to. Channel. Turn down the volume. Oh my goodness. So yeah, it was... Hello everyone, by the way. Huh. My chat's not showing. There we go. Gosh, yeah, so... I wasn't actually sure I was going to be able to do a tea time stream today because back on Friday, I sprained my wrist. And so my hand has been kind of wrapped up to prevent, from bending at the wrist too much. So yeah, I was just kind of like, I don't know if I'll do a tea time stream today, because I wasn't sure I could, hold the tray and everything, and I have to move stuff around, arrange the lights and the camera and stuff. So, but I just was like, let's just get as far as I can into starting the stream and see how far I get. And if I have to cancel, then I'll cancel. But, because yesterday's stream was easy. It was just, I just had to turn on the computer and, but this live stream takes actual setting up to do. So, but yeah, so far so good. So yeah. Hey everyone, good to see you all. Is this keeping up? Ozzy says, hope you're doing well with your hand. Yeah, so far it's okay. The first night that I did it, that I sprained my wrist, it was so painful. It felt like my wrist was on fire. Like someone was taking a branding iron to my wrist. It was so painful. And, yeah. What's crazy is that when I was a kid, I sprained my wrist. So this is the second time this wrist has been sprained. Yeah, and actually I think the reason why I sprained my wrist on Friday was probably because my wrist was more prone to spraining. But that being said, you won't even believe how I sprained it. This is the funniest part. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I won't I won't judge you if you laugh, because it's hilarious. I sprained my wrist on Friday by putting my hands on my hips, right? I was cooking dinner and watching TV, and I'm standing in the kitchen watching TV. I put my hands on my hips, and I just rolled my wrist in a certain way and totally pulled something. I heard a pop. And, oh man, it was just pain after that. And it's ridiculous. My friends were laughing when I told them. One of my friends was like, oh, you're getting old. And I was like, I know, the old is coming for me. But yeah, I think what made me sprain my wrist was the fact that I sprained my wrist as a kid. And so, yeah, it was just ridiculous how it happened. But yeah, so, thankfully, it's been better. Wait, did I sprain it on Friday or did I sprain it on Thursday? Today's Saturday, right? Okay, so I sprained it on Thursday night. And then all through yesterday, it got a bit better. I wasn't in all that pain, but whenever I moved my wrist, for any reason, it was just painful. And yeah, and today it's duller, thankfully. So yeah, I'm not suffering or anything. But yeah. Oh, yesterday's stream I did it was the Disneyland Railroad Simulator. So I just kind of tinkered around with that and stuff. Cuz the guy who designed it, he's thinking about creating a new version, because the version I have is 6 years old, and he basically hasn't touched it since then. And so he's thinking about like making a new version now that it's 6 years later and there's better technology and, you know, stuff like that available. So he's thinking about making a new version, and so I thought it'd be kind of cool to revisit the simulator and play it again and show people what it's like, because, you know, like I was telling people on the live stream, like, I love that thing so much. You know, on this channel, I don't really do product endorsement. Like, you've probably noticed that I don't, like, advertise products to buy and stuff like that. I don't really believe in it, because for the most part, the reason why people do it is because it earns them money, and they don't really even use the products that they advertise. So I was like, you know, if I don't use something, I'm not going to advertise it. And there's a lot of stuff, like I've gotten a lot of emails over the past couple of years from various companies saying, oh, advertise our product. And I look at the stuff and I'm like, I would never use this stuff. I would never pay for this stuff. I'm not going to advertise it to people. You know, of course, some people think I'm totally crazy. They think I should just take the money and run, but that's just not who I am. You know, like, I just can't do that to people. But this Disneyland Railroad Simulator, I play it a lot. Sometimes, like, you know, like, if I've got extra time in the day or something and I just want to sit down and relax, but I don't feel like watching TV or something, I'll just put on the simulator and I'll play the simulator. And so it's something I actually do use, and I've had it for 6 years, and I love it. And, you know, so I thought, I'm like, you know what? I'll tell people if they want this thing, here's how to buy it and all that, because it's only like $20. And, you know, it's very realistic, though. That's the only thing, is that if you're the kind of person who just likes to get a game started and it's got to be easy enough to understand in a few minutes, this isn't it for you. Because this is like realistic steam locomotive operation. So you got to know all the valves and how they all work and how, you know, how much steam to use for certain things. And, you know, like, it's realistic operation. Nobody has ever created a game that was this realistic with steam operation before. And so his is the first. And so if you're like an extreme steam locomotive nerd and you know how a steam locomotive works, and you feel like if you were behind the throttle of one that you could drive one, then you could play this game. So there are like certain settings that make it easier, certain things, you know, instead of having to handle the fire yourself and make sure that the boiler is constantly full of water. They have a setting where you could put like an automatic fireman to take care of the fire and take care of the water in the boiler. They've got automatic things like that to make it easier, but it's still a bit complicated, especially getting the locomotive started. Can be pretty complex. So yeah, but anyway, yeah, I did that live stream yesterday, and if you want to see it, it's just interesting to watch, honestly. And with that live stream, I got right into it. So I didn't even show people how to start up the locomotive. I just, for that particular live stream, I just started it right in the middle of operations so people could see what it's like. Curly Q says, can you cause the engines to have boiler explosions? You can simulate an explosion, but you won't see the explosion. That's the only thing. So you can ruin the locomotive, and it will tell you the locomotive, you know, like, it'll explain, like, for instance, if you don't refill the water in the boiler and you let it drop below the crown sheet, that's like, you know, thermal expansion explosion. And so you can simulate that, and what'll happen is when it gets low enough, all of a sudden you'll hear, and then a sign will show up on the screen that says the water dropped below the crown sheet melted and caused an explosion. And so, yeah, the only thing is you can't see the explosion. You can also derail the train as well. If you don't have the switches aligned properly and you roll over a switch that isn't properly aligned, you know, you can cause a derailment. Although the derailments are like more like a digital malfunction. So you don't see the train suddenly like plow off the tracks and destroy a building, right? Instead, the train just kind of slides off the tracks at the same level and just keeps sliding along the same plane, and all the parts kind of jumble together. They don't break apart or anything, they just jumble together, because digital objects, you know, when they malfunction, things can go through each other without destroying each other. So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff you can do to it, and I've done it like many times. But yeah, so I think the reason why he didn't include like destruction is because he was saying like, oh, that would take extra, you know, work and stuff like that to put that in, and it's actually just much better to put all that effort into the operation of the locomotive. So, yeah. Train Lover asks, how do they store the Liberty Bell in Disney World? If you check satellite view, it shows the riverboat on the other side of the train bridge in Frontierland. How does that work? So they have that canal that you saw that is, and this is at Walt Disney World in Florida, folks, so this is not the same thing for Disneyland. But in Florida, they have a canal that connects the rivers of America and Frontierland and goes all the way out into the Seven Seas Lagoon, which is the giant lake outside the theme park. And that canal was specifically put there to allow them to drain the Frontierland River for maintenance. But it also doubly acts as a dry dock for their riverboat, the Liberty Bell. And there is the Walt Disney World Railroad has a bridge that crosses over the canal, but the bridge is a swing bridge, so the bridge can actually swing out of the way to allow the boat to go through, and then the boat can actually sail down the canal for about like a fifth of the way. That's as far as the track goes. If they go any further with it, the boat will come off the track, and that's on purpose, because if they need to take the boat into like a proper dry dock and completely rebuild the boat, because it's made of wood, and if they need to completely rebuild the boat, they can't do that next to the park. They have to take it to a larger facility that is nearby. And so the way they do that is they can use tugboats to pull the Liberty Bell steamboat off of its track and then pull it down the canal and then out into the Seven Seas Lagoon, and then out of the Seven Seas Lagoon into the nearby Bay Lake. And on the north side of Bay Lake is where they have their dry docks for their various lake boats and stuff like that. And so that's where they can service the Liberty Bell. And so that's how they do it. At Disneyland, they can never take their steamboat. At Disneyland California, they can never take their steamboat out of the park. It has to be, all its refurbishments, all the work that goes on is done in the theme park, like within view of the guests, because they have nowhere to take it. Disneyland is landlocked, but in Florida, Magic Kingdom is surrounded by lakes. So, so when you're at Disneyland, sometimes you can see the Mark Twain Riverboat surrounded by scaffolding and stuff, and that's them refurbishing things, and it all happens in front of people's view because they can't take the boat anywhere. It can only stay in the park. So that's an interesting little fun fact. Let's get this tea brewing. Today is Earl Grey, just like usual. 5 Caps Films says, is it true that Disneyland Tokyo, someone said that it's not actually owned by Disney and pay royalties. So Tokyo Disneyland is owned by the Oriental Land Company. So that's OLC, sorry. Oriental Land Company. And it's an interesting story. The reason why is because way back in the 80s, uh, Japan really wanted a Disneyland, and they approached the Disney company about offering them, land and things to build a park. But Disney was not interested. They didn't think that the Japanese would really take to a Disney theme park very well. But they didn't realize that in Japan, they were obsessed with it. They wanted a theme park. And so the Oriental Land Company came in and said, we'll pay for everything. We'll operate the theme park. We'll do everything ourselves. All you need to do is build us the theme park and teach us how to operate it. And in return, you'll get royalties for it. And Disney thought, that's like a win-win-win situation. They're like, they realized they couldn't say no because it's just free money to them. So yeah, so the Tokyo Disneyland Resort is owned and operated by the Oriental Land Company through the training and of Disney. And what's crazy, this is the crazy part. Over the years, the United States Disney parks, their quality has gone downhill severely. And it's funny because in Japan, you might have heard things like, oh, they have the safest railroads, they have the safest infrastructure, all that kind of stuff. It's because the Japanese are very meticulously detailed about how they operate things. They do not let quality standards drop unless it's by intention. So it's funny because if you go to Tokyo Disneyland, you'll notice even the oldest rides, even the most unpopular rides, still look brand new. There's a ride from 2002 at Tokyo Disney Sea that is not the most popular ride in the park. I'm sure most people have never even heard of it. It's called Sinbad, right? And it's not even based off of a Disney movie. It's just based off of the general understanding of the Sinbad story. And that ride still looks brand new. There's no dust on any of the animatronics, anything like that. Oriental Land Company takes such good care of everything, and they have upheld the standards of the Disney quality that was still around even back in the 80s, even though the American parks have gone severely downhill. So it's funny because you could go to Tokyo Disneyland, and it's like, it's weird. You look at certain rides and you're like, this ride looks like it was made in the 80s, but it doesn't operate like it was made in the 80s. It operates like it was built yesterday. Everything is so clean and so well preserved. And the quality of the cast members, their happiness and their eagerness to help, and there's never they never appear like they're in a bad mood. It's crazy because it's like they've taken everything that Disney taught them and they've never dropped the ball. It's so cool. So yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, Wild Smiley says probably not going to drink much or any tea until fall. Summer's not really a time to drink a steaming mug of Earl Grey, at least for me. I agree. But thankfully, I knew that this weekend we would have cold weather, so that's why I scheduled a tea time, was because I knew that it was going to be like today it's like 63 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's a cold day, and it's a good day to have tea. So let's go ahead and empty this out so I can start brewing. Okay. And then fill that up with boiling water. There we go. I don't know if I mentioned it already, but Earl Grey is the tea today. That rhymed. Earl Grey is the tea today. And that'll go in for about 4 minutes, just about. So 128 is when I can expect for that tea to be ready. I'll top this off too. I like the teacup to be nice and hot, so that way the tea doesn't get cold when I pour it in. Okay. Oh, so Kimmy Bear asks, what's for snack today? Interesting, I'm trying something new. So, normally you guys see that I have these McVitie's tea biscuits, right? And this time, I bought another version of their tea biscuit. These are called Hobnobs. And they're made with rolled oats. And so I imagine, I've never had one yet. I was going to try it today. I imagine it probably tastes a lot like a granola bar, but it's got milk chocolate on top. So that's something new I'm trying today. Because I heard that it was voted the best biscuit in the UK. So I was like, I gotta try it. And then of course I have the usual Walker's shortbread, Scottish shortbread. I miss when I used to make my own shortbread, but it's so difficult, and because I have carpal tunnel syndrome in both arms, I can't mix the butter and the stuff like I used to. It's just difficult. Let's see. Spencer Townsend. Hey Alex, did you hear about the ruling regarding the SS United States? I did. You guys, let's address something real quick. Harry in the chat. Harry is not actually Harry. That is Jack Bradley, the same guy who's kind of been, you know, on and off this channel for the past year, just wreaking havoc. Just ignore him. I honestly, if I delete his profile or block him, he'll just create another one in 5 minutes and come back. So there's really nothing you can do. So I've learned that for the past year, and people have told me themselves, are like, just ignore him. So I'm like, that's really all I can do, you know. So I have been building a case against him in order to sue him. So the more he says, the more it'll help my case. So yeah, we'll just see about that. But for now, for you guys, you know, don't engage, because it's not really a winning battle for you guys. But let's see. Max says, have you ever had Irish breakfast tea? Yes, I actually have Irish breakfast tea in the cupboard. I also have, let's see. I have Irish, English breakfast, Earl Grey, Lady Grey, Yorkshire Gold, and Darjeeling. I don't have Darjeeling on the tea time streams. Oh, one more minute on that. I don't have Darjeeling on the tea time streams because I wanted to keep it to like UK teas, if that makes sense. The Darjeeling, I'll just have that with, you know, a bit of like honey or agave nectar, and then I'll just like sip on that while I'm working on a video or something. So, but yeah, otherwise, yeah. Ozzy says, have a Long Island iced tea. I know. I gotta try that. I've never had one, and I know that they're really, really strong. So I really should try that. But I don't think I could drink a whole one, honestly. From what I hear, I don't think I could. So yeah. But somebody asked me about the SS United States ruling. Yeah, so for those who haven't heard, because this is relatively new news, the SS United States, as you might have known, uh, is dealing with issues of needing to find a new place to dock because they were able to win a court ruling that said that they didn't have to pay the much higher docking fees that were recently added on, and the ruling also says that they have to find a new place to dock the ship in the next 90 days. The judge gave them 90 days, which is not a long time to find what they need to find. I mean, I know it sounds like, oh, that's 3 months, but when you've got 1,000-foot long ship and you need to find a place that is affordable to dock it and that the dock is okay with you docking it there, because they know the SS United States has been nothing but moving from dock to dock, and nothing ever changes. It never improves. No one ever develops it. It just sits there for 10 to 20 years, and it rots away at the dock and pollutes the water because of the paint and everything and the rust going into the water. So it's going to be difficult for them to find another dock and to find one that is willing to let 1,000-foot long liner just sit there rusting away. So that's going to be difficult. Now, I know I have expressed in the past that I do not like the SS United States. It's definitely not my favorite liner. But that being said, I don't want the SS United States to disappear off the face of the earth. Because, I do think, it is a historic liner, and a lot of people really care about it. And we don't have very many historic ocean liners left. There's just, maybe a handful in this world. So it would be really a shame to lose it. It'd be cool if somebody with a lot of money could come along and develop it and stuff. So that way people who do love the ship can enjoy it. But I've also been very vocal that I have my doubts about it because, the ship is essentially a empty canvas with which you could paint anything. But the problem is that it's also a limited size canvas, to use the same metaphor. There's only so much you could do with it in terms of your imagination. If you want to do certain things with it, you have to fit within the confines of what's given to you. And that's, depending on what you want to do with it, that's not always easy. And I think that's what makes it so difficult for people to want to invest in it and build it out, is because it's just going to be so difficult. And it doesn't have the same protections that the Queen Mary has. The Queen Mary was really lucky to be designated as a floating building, so that way she didn't have to follow the most modern maritime safety codes and things like that. It allowed her to keep all her original interiors because she's now considered a building. SS United States, it'll be a long road to give SS United States those same kind of protections, and even then, most of her interiors are entirely gone. In fact, I think all of her interiors have been completely stripped, so there's really not much left. So anything that goes in there would basically make a brand new ship. So it is a difficult and a very long road. But I don't want the ship to disappear from the face of the earth. I hope somebody can come in and do something about it. I just don't see how. That's the only thing. I don't have the same optimism for the SS United States that I did about the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary, the reason why I was so adamant about saving that ship is because the Queen Mary, there was essentially nothing wrong with it. It had hotel rooms, it had the infrastructure for entertainment and tours, and it had a whole bunch of original interiors, everything was there to make a tourist attraction. It just needed the right management to make it work. But as the United States, it's basically starting from scratch, using you know, a shell that needs to be fixed up. So we'll see. I'm hoping for good things for the ship. Chris says, have you heard that the Battleship New Jersey is now done with being in dry dock? Yesterday she headed back to her home port. Oh, nice. I did hear that recently New Jersey was done. That's interesting. I think maybe I'm remembering things wrong, but I feel like it was in dry dock very briefly. Like not that long. But I don't know, maybe it's been a couple months. I don't know. Alright, so let's have some tea. Kat says someone has to buy her, calling Dubai. I honestly feel like Dubai would probably do it. Maybe. They already have the QE2. I don't think they'd want another one. Another liner, I mean. The QE2 is doing pretty well. But it's only doing well because they're revamping a lot of the interiors to be modern. So they're giving it a modern feel. So it's not because they're hanging on the history. Because I think the people of Dubai really don't care about British history or British design. So, I mean, I think that's just an estimation. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that they're really marketing the ship as this party boat as opposed to, you know, a British liner. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. I'd rather have the QE2 still around and market it as a party boat than to not have it around at all. So, but yeah. Let's try this hobnob. I've never had one of these before. The chocolate's already melting in my hands. All right. Okay. I can see why that was voted best biscuit in the UK. That is good. I could even eat that without tea. And you know, it's interesting because it's really sweet. And the biscuits I've tried that were British, including shortbread, don't taste all that sweet. I mean, sure, the shortbread for sure has a lot of sugar in it, but the sugar doesn't come out as super sweet. This does taste very sweet. And it's not a bad thing because I'm American. We're used to sweet stuff. But it is surprising, that's for sure. Chris says Battleship New Jersey was only in dry dock about 2.5 to 3 months maximum. Okay, so that's definitely longer than I thought. For some reason, in my head, I thought New Jersey was in dry dock for about 3 weeks. 3 months is a lot longer than I originally thought. So I was like, I think my timing is all messed up because I feel like it was only in dry dock for 3 weeks. Five Caps Film says, what is your opinion on Lusitania? It was a beautiful ship. It was really tragic how it was bombed and then sunk. And it did it in 18 minutes, I believe. It sank in 18 minutes, if I have that correctly. So yeah, I'm more of a Mauritania fan, but through learning about Mauritania, I learned about Lusitania. So, yeah, Lusitania is a pretty good ship. I like the interiors. I think some of the Lusitania's interiors look better than the Mauritania's in certain places. So, is this... I'm trying to see if the chat is keeping up with... Oh, it is, okay. I usually never catch up with the chat. So, yeah. Kat says, do I have any updates for the Queen Mary? Is it in the black? So, yes. The ship has been turning a profit ever since April of last year, 2023. And it's been consistently turning a profit. She's been doing really well. And there's been lots of additions of shows and entertainment happening on the ship, which is really good because that's one of the things I had emailed the manager, Steve Koloka, about was the ship needs more entertainment. It needs more reason for people to be there. And so they've been adding a lot of entertainment. And right now, on Tuesdays, you can go there for the Meet Me at the Mary event, which is essentially like a happy hour for the bar, but it includes live jazz and swing band music. So it's a really popular event. It overflows often. The Meet Me at the Mary event often overflows out of the observation bar and down onto the deck below. It's so cool how many people go there to see that. And then they're also going to be doing a monthly event. So I hope I get this right. The last Saturday of every month will have the orchestra band, Alex Mendham and his band. And they will play period music. So jazz, swing, foxtrots, that kind of stuff. And so it'll be like period music, and I've heard Alex Mendham's band. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's just like, listening to music and live music in the past. It's really cool. So they're doing that now, and then of course they've got a bunch of summer events. So they've got like I think once a month or maybe twice a month they do a movie night. And the movie nights are free. So you can go to the Queen Mary to see a movie for free outside of the ship. And you can pay to upgrade your experience to include like a little picnic dessert dinner kind of thing that you can have. And I think you get to sit on a couch to watch the movie instead of on the grass. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. They're doing lots of really neat stuff to bring in locals, which is good too because, most of Queen Mary's visitation is by locals. A good chunk is by, foreigners, people who maybe are coming from the other side of the country or from another country entirely. But a lot of them come in through the Carnival Cruise Line. They stop there at Long Beach and let off a bunch of their passengers to wander around. So, they get to see it that way. Um, if I kept filming this for a second there, I thought you were going to play the music. Oh, I can't. I don't have his music. And I'm not near my computer. My computer's on the other side of the room. So, yeah. But it's good music. But yeah, so the ship is doing really, really well. Oh, and something else they did recently. Um, they have been repairing and reinstalling little original details. For instance, on the A deck lobby at the old purser's office desk, where today you can check in for your hotel room, they've reinstalled the original purser's office letters that were above. They were illuminated letters that said purser's office. And they've reinstalled those. They were in storage for, I don't know, maybe 5 decades. so they've reinstalled it, and they're doing little things like that all over the ship. I don't even know the full extent because they're not publicizing it. They're not talking about it. It's just one of those things where you walk by it and you're like, oh, that's there now, and it's kind of cool. So I'm gonna send my friend Shiloh. He's gonna go to the Queen Mary, and he's gonna take pictures of whatever has changed, because, like I said, they're not publicizing what they're doing. So we kind of have to walk around the ship and just look and see what's different, so that way we know what to report. But yeah, they've been doing little things like that, and I heard that a lot more is coming. They're going to be repairing a lot of, little things around the ship, light fixtures, signs, repairing railings and stuff like that. Just a bunch of little stuff, things that have been missing for 50 some odd years will be reinstalled and, refurbished. So they're doing a lot of little details. And that's good too, because it's crazy. I look at old photos of the Queen Mary, and the ship was so well decorated, so beautiful. But the thing is, depending on who you are, you might not ever know it ever looked that good. You go there today and either you like it or you don't. But for those that don't, the reason, oftentimes they tell me, oh, I don't like the way the Queen Mary looks because it looks so old and tired and outdated. And I'm like, that's just because you're looking at carpets that were installed in the 80s and 90s. You're looking at, areas where decorations were removed and put in storage, or where light fixtures aren't working, so it makes an area extra dark. So as they're repairing all this stuff and bringing it back, these little tiny details will really make the ship shine. But I definitely hope that they get to doing the big details soon as well, because the big details would be things like replacing those carpets. Those carpets, man, those patterns, I do not like them. So yeah, hopefully they get around to replacing them and fixing other things, and making the pool room nice and reopening it again for people to walk around, and just a bunch of stuff. The ship needs more things to see and do. I was watching last night I was watching a vlog of this couple who decided to take a trip aboard the Queen Mary. Not take a trip, stay aboard the Queen Mary. And they were walking around and they were so excited to see all these Art Deco rooms. They saw the main hall, they saw the observation bar. And then they realized that there were no other Art Deco rooms to see. They were all locked. They couldn't see the main lounge, they couldn't see the second class main lounge, they couldn't see the first class smoking room. They went down to Mauritania room, which used to be the third-class garden lounge, they couldn't even walk in there. It was locked. You know, there was all these things. You know, like they saw the third class nursery because there's a sign on the door that says third class nursery, and they were like, why is it labeled if you can't see it? You know, so it's those things. I'm like, I look at it, I'm like, these rooms need to be reopened. And even if they don't want to reopen all of them, at least reopen the main lounge on Promenade Deck. At least. People need to see one of the big Art Deco rooms fully furnished with furniture and carpets and stuff like that, and decorated, you know, fresh plants and flowers, and see people using it, you know. It brings the ship to life when you see people just lounging about, relaxing, sipping a cup of tea or coffee or Starbucks even. I don't care. I don't care if it's Starbucks. Give people a latte or something and let them just relax and pretend like they're in the middle of the ocean in the 1930s, you know, with their Starbucks, their 1930s Starbucks drink, their Frappuccino. um, yeah, Tom says, thanks for mentioning Alex's big band concerts. It seems like many people plan to show up for Alex's concerts in period costumes. Yeah, from what I hear, because I've never been to his concerts, but from what I hear, people show up to his concerts in full, like, outfit, in full 30s, 40s, 50s outfits. And it sounds fantastic. I mean, and that's what they're hoping to happen at the Queen Mary by hosting him once every month, is that people will show up in costume and stuff, and, you know, and it'll bring the ship to life, I think. Kat says, true, but still needs more work to be done. I saw a leaking ceiling on a rainy day on M deck. An original doorknob fell off in my stateroom. Oh, you're absolutely right. A lot of these rooms and stuff, they need some serious attention. When it comes to the rain, that all comes from the outside decks. The sealant between the deck boards needs to be replaced. You know, it's not sealing the decks anymore. So water seeps between the boards and gets underneath, and then rots away the wood and rots away some of the metal, and it creates little holes. These pinhead-sized holes can allow water through, and, you know, and because the ship has both shear and it has camber, the water just travels around the ship. And as it travels, it can originate from one end of the ship, but then show up as a leaking ceiling in another part of the ship. So it becomes an absolute nightmare. And as crazy as that sounds, it's totally true. You know, the water can originate from one area and then leak in a completely different area of the ship. So yeah, they really need to address that and fix that. I know that they want to. So, you know, I've had friends that spoke with Steve Kaloka and stuff like that, and he very much wants to fix the upper decks and get them watertight and everything like that. Fix the, you know, cut out the rotten metal, you know, and weld in fresh sheets of steel and stuff like that. It's just money. Money is what kind of stands in the way. They're turning a profit, but they're not, like, getting money hand over fist or anything like that. You know, it's very much a small, like, save our dollars kinds of thing, you know. But yeah, the staterooms that you can rent to stay in overnight, those need some serious attention. You know, some of them look real grungy and dirty. Some of them just look bland and boring, you know. Some of them are just white walls. No decoration. Those are the rooms that need the most attention. The ones that don't have paneling. They need something. You know. Yeah. I could probably go on and on about what I would do to those rooms to fix them up, but Um, Tom says, do you know when the Winston Churchill restaurant will reopen? No, because they were originally saying, so they were saying last year, oh, it'll be open by December of last year. And then after December came, they were saying, oh, it'll be open by summer of 2024. Well, it's summer now, and they still haven't opened it. So I honestly don't know. I heard some rumor that they're having trouble finding people to staff it. You might have heard that across the U.S. we're having issues of hiring people. We can't find enough workers to do the jobs that we need, and the workers that do show up want to get paid a lot more, than what the job can pay. So, that's kind of what's I think is happening right now. They want to reopen Winston's, but they just can't find people to staff it. Five Caps Film says, Alex, in one of your past streams, you were talking about quilted maple being added somewhere. What were you talking about? So quilted maple is a type of wood grain. So when you cut lumber into thin veneers to decorate wall panels, those wall panels are often named something. Because, like, quilted maple, for instance, comes from a maple tree. It's not always necessarily a certain type of species of maple. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But it's a fine maple tree that someone can identify and go, oh, that one's going to develop a certain type of pattern to its wood grain. And so quilted maple is beautiful because it looks like shiny ripples in a pond. So if you can imagine the ripples in a pond, it looks like that. Wow, it's raining really hard outside. It looks like that, except it's, because of the way it's stained and everything, it's very gold and it shimmers in the light. And it looks three-dimensional, because when I first ever saw quilted maple, it was on the second class main staircase. And I was standing there, and I was like, look at this wall paneling. And I touched it, because it looked like it was wavy. And I thought, I was like, maybe you can feel it. But I touched it, it was perfectly flat. It's just, that's the way it catches the light. It creates this waviness. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And that's when I fell in love with the wood veneers on the ship. Because I realized I could see a difference between all the wood veneers. That's why I get mad when people comment on my channel and they're like, oh, all the wood on the ship looks the same. How can you say it's different? I'm like, how can you not say it's different? I walked into the first class smoking room, and you could see how the wood grain was the shape of tiger faces and tiger stripes. And you could go into the, you could see the quilted maple of the first class smoking room. And when you go into the travel bureau, that's covered in satin wood. Satin wood looks like quilted maple, except the ripples are bigger. So instead of tiny little ripples like on a pond, it's like bigger waves. And that catches the light and looks absolutely beautiful. It just shimmers and shines. And and then seeing the burled elm in the lifts, the elevators. The burled elm looks like the surface of the sun. If you've ever seen a photograph or like a digital rendering of the surface of the sun with all the little weird warping explosions, it looks like the surface of the sun. It's absolutely just amazing. And after that, I was like, I never realized you could decorate a ship or a building or something with all these different kinds of beautiful woods, And it's a very subtle elegance. And that's, I think, what Queen Mary does best. It's the subtlety. So, yeah. Um, oh, hey, Moonzer. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's nice to get the teapots from the ships. Cat L says the smoking room is gorgeous. I wonder if the functional fireplace in a smoking room was a common thing on ocean liners. Titanic had the same deal. I think it was somewhat common. Yeah. Um, I think it's. I think definitely it was common for smoking rooms because, obviously they didn't want to have a real fire aboard the ship because ships tend to burn. um, but to maintain a sense of high quality and class, they would allot one fireplace for the smoking room. So I can't say it was common across all ocean liners, but maybe at least for British liners. So Chris says, what happened to your hand or wrist? I sprained my wrist on Thursday. Chris says, I can barely hear the rain. Yeah, a minute ago it was just dark. I mean, it looked like it was nighttime outside, so I looked and I'm like, why is it so dark? And then all of a sudden just this sheets of rain came down. And now it's all bright again like it's daytime. It's funny. So at last says, how big actually was the Queen Mary's popularity with the public back then, or her influence and impact to society? So she was really popular. When it came to transatlantic ships going to the UK or France, the Queen Mary, when she was around, was the most popular ship to take. And I know some people will be like, oh, but people loved SS Normandy. Yeah, people did love SS Normandy, but Queen Mary had gotten a lot more passengers per voyage than Normandy did. You could say it was things like Normandy was too expensive, or maybe people just felt like Normandy was just not for them. I don't know, but the thing is that the fact of the matter is that Queen Mary was more popular, for whatever reason it was, whether it was her being cheaper or maybe she just felt more home. I like to think, see, because people go, oh, Normandy was the most beautiful ship on the ocean, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's not something you can necessarily say, oh, that's the most beautiful thing on the planet. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some people don't think Normandy is that beautiful. I do. I think Normandy's beautiful, or was beautiful, I mean to say. But I would not want to stay the night on the Normandy. It very much looked... It didn't look comfy. It looked posh and really overdone. It didn't look comfortable. Like, it was just very, very rich. And so, if the Normandy was still around today, yeah, I'd go visit the ship. You take some video and photos and walk around, but I wouldn't want to stay on the ship. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't scream welcome to me. It just screams stay out. You don't have enough money. So yeah. Queen Mary was more popular because when you look around the ship, there's a lot of warm colors. When I was reading the book, the shipbuilder book for the Queen Mary, the shipbuilders often described the interior colors as being autumn colors. they never really, like, there were only a few, like maybe a handful of places on the ship that were decorated with bright colors. They chose these warm autumn colors because it feels welcoming, it feels familiar, it feels warm. And you walk around the Queen Mary and you feel like you're in a home, not a palace. And I think that's the number one thing that Normandy lovers hate about Queen Mary. Queen Mary doesn't feel palatial, you know. But then people who love Queen Mary love it because it feels like you're invited into, you know, a rich countryside manor. But Normandy feels kind of like a mausoleum. So, yeah, I think that's what made Queen Mary popular ultimately. People want to stay. If you're going to stay the night in a place, you want that place to feel comfy and cozy and warm and fluffy. And that's what Queen Mary felt like. So, and then of course, you know, when it came to the culture, popularity and culture, Queen Mary, you know, at first was... So, in the 1930s, the United States did have a United States line, an ocean line company, but it wasn't super popular. People would still prefer the British ships. They still preferred White Star Line. They still preferred Cunard. And, because it was just, the quality was better, you know? And the ships were more beautiful, especially on the outside. You know, and so, what am I trying to say? So, even though these were British ships, Americans felt like, oh, these are our ships too. You know, like they thought of them as part of the family, if you will. So when Queen Mary first came to New York and, you know, through the 1930s, the Americans considered Queen Mary an American ship. You know, Normandy was the French ship. Queen Mary was, you know, oh, these are, you know, Queen Mary was like an American ship, essentially. Of course, it was very much British. But that's the sentiment. And so, after the war, the Queen Mary was considered a ship, a war veteran ship, you know. It did its duty in war and came out, you know, unscathed, and so people considered it a war veteran. I mean, there were so many times where, like, if the Queen Mary passed a U.S. Navy ship or a British Navy ship or something, it was saluted. It was, you know, they give blasts of a whistle. They'd put up, you know, signal flags. They'd have the men and the officers up on deck, and, you know, they would stand at attention and stuff. The Queen Mary was, oddly enough, you know, and positively oddly, treated like a war veteran, someone you give respect to for its service. And it's so cool whenever I stumble across photos or videos of, you know, a naval ship of some kind coming across the Queen Mary, you know. I don't remember where I heard this story, but I heard it recently. There was an interesting story that, like, there was an American Navy ship that would patrol the waters. This is after World War II. After World War II, it would patrol the waters just off the coast of the United States, and oftentimes, if it was nighttime or daytime or whatever, if they saw a ship along the horizon, they would signal the ship and say, identify yourself and where you're going and stuff like that. And the ship would have to call back on the radio and say, oh, this is the whatever, we're on our way to wherever. But when they'd see the Queen Mary, they'd message them and say, what ship are you and where are you going? And what would happen is the captain would just switch on the lights for the funnels, and the funnels would light up. And that's all they needed to say. So that says a lot about the Queen Mary. That says a lot about the Queen Mary. So the ship was just so well respected. And sometimes it comes as a surprise when I tell people that In 1967, when the Queen Mary retired, she was the world's most famous ship, even more famous than Titanic. And, you know, you gotta understand that this was the days before the James Cameron movie. Sure, there were other movies, you know, back then. You know, you had the A Night to Remember and stuff like that. But Titanic was just considered a ship that sank in a terrible accident. That's all it was to people. There was no emotional, like, attachment to it that same way. Really, it was the younger generations that were being born who would start to have a romantic image of Titanic in their head. So, in 1967, the Queen Mary was the most famous ship in the world, and it was more well known across the globe than Titanic was. When Queen Mary went to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, during her last great cruise, everybody in the city showed up to see it. They knew what the Queen Mary was in Brazil. You know, they probably didn't even know what the Titanic was in Brazil at that time. You know, I'm pretty sure the Anglican movie A Night to Remember was probably not that popular in Brazil. So I don't think they would have even known what Titanic was. But Queen Mary, they knew, you know. So, I mean, I might be wrong about that, but what I do know is that every country the ship stopped at, no matter if it was a small country, they even visited Chile and, you know, just a whole bunch of countries. Or they went to the Canary Islands, all that kind of stuff. Everybody knew the Queen Mary. Everybody knew. So, it's amazing. It's just an amazing story. That's what captivated me about the ship. So, yeah. Oh, Chris! Wow, tornado sirens. You know, I remember I used to stay with my mom and sister in Alabama. They used to live in Alabama with our family, and I was there one time, and we had our tornado sirens going off, and we lived in a small town. And the town had a tornado siren, but it wasn't working at that time. So we were lucky that we even heard the sirens going off from the nearby city. So that was just really lucky. But yeah, tornadoes are not fun. Evan says, when are you playing the Titanic demo again? I need to upgrade the demo because I found out that since the last time I upgraded it, there's been a new version put out. So I gotta upgrade it and then test it, and then I can play it again. So I don't know when, but it'll probably be on a Saturday sometime in the next couple of weeks. You know. Arrow says, if you had the money and time, would you ever do a video on the SS Rotterdam, even if it's on the newer side of the ship design? What about QE2 or the White Swan Hotel in Northumberland? I don't see myself making a video about Rotterdam. I really try to make only videos about things that really jump off the page and capture my imagination. There's just got to be something about a ship that is interesting to me, or a story that's interesting to me. I don't know how many of you guys saw my video about the Titanic Hotel and SS Nomadic. I noticed in the analytics that a lot of people showed up, and then after like a minute, they just left. They didn't want to watch the rest of it. They probably didn't enjoy it, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them for that. The reason why is because as I was making that video, I just wasn't that interested. I mean, it's interesting, the story of Nomadic and what it was used for and all that. It is interesting, but it was not interesting enough for me to make a video about it. And that's what happens when I try to make a video about something that I'm not obsessed about, is that it just doesn't come off as very entertaining. I don't, it, you know, my heart and soul isn't in it. And that video, I had to admit, like, halfway through it, after designing the video and stuff, I was just like, I don't feel it, you know. It's interesting, but it's not interesting enough. And I think the people who watched that video felt the same way, because it got terrible analytics. People left after a minute of watching it, and even if they stayed, they didn't stay to finish it. The analytics just kept dropping and dropping, dropping towards the end of the video when there was like nobody left, and it was just like, it was terrible. It was, yeah, it didn't do very well. So even halfway through the video, I gave up on the narration, and I was just like, I'm just gonna like skip the narration for now, and I'll come back later, because I had nothing left to say. I was like, I don't know what else to say. What other narration can I put in here? So yeah, that's what happens when I make a video that I'm not passionate about. It just doesn't come out right. And so so yeah, I might make a video about the QE2. That's a big might. Because it is interesting. It went through the Falklands War. It served as a troop ship, you know, and I have a lot of respect for it because it did that. But the only reason why I haven't made a video about it yet is because I just don't know how much I want to make a video about it. Do I want it enough? I don't know. So, yeah. It is difficult. Let's see here. Hey, Justin. Five Caps says, Alex, have you been down to Salem or Eugene? Yes, I have. I mean, I didn't really do anything down there, but, you know, I've passed through it. So, alright. You know what I found out? So, you know, I'm going to be taking a trip to New Orleans in a couple of months. And I found out that New Orleans is safer than Portland, Oregon, where I live. I was like, wow. And it's pretty safe here. I say that, like, loosely, because at times it can get pretty dangerous. But for the most part, you know, like, this region, you can go on a walk outside and not worry about anything. And I always had this image in my head that New Orleans was, like, super dangerous. Like, you couldn't walk anywhere without being mugged or something. But then I actually, like, looked at the statistics and stuff, and New Orleans is rated much safer than some of the biggest cities in the U.S. It's even safer than, like, a city in, I forget what city, a city in Tennessee. I was like, Tennessee, really? Like, you know, that's like a Republican state, right? Like, that's, like, they have guns and stuff there, you know, where they're, you know, they're like, oh, if something bad happens, I have my gun. And it's like, that is the least safest city in the U.S. It was number one city in the U.S. that was, like, the most dangerous or something like that. And I was like, how is that possible? But, like, yeah, it was weird. So New Orleans is actually, in terms of when you compare it to the other big cities in the U.S., L.A., New York, Seattle, Portland, New Orleans is safer than them. So I'm like, okay, I feel more confident going to New Orleans now. So, yeah, you guys, yeah, Nomadic was definitely interesting. For me, it was interesting on paper. I loved reading about it. But as soon as I started making the video, I was like, this isn't... my thing. But it was cool because my friend gave me the footage that he shot going through it, because he was there on a family trip. It was his thing. He was going there, and so I saw the footage and I was like, this is really cool. I actually would like to go there and see it, and and like touch the bulkheads and stuff and be like, oh my gosh, this was like Titanic. So yeah, it is interesting. It's just that I think my video wasn't interesting to me, at least. I'm gonna try another one of these hobnobs. These hobnobs are so good. I'm only buying those from now on. So about the New Orleans trip, because I know people, they show up for some live streams, disappear for others, and they come back. They probably don't hear me talk about the news a lot, what's happening. But everybody knows that I want to do this UK trip. So going to the UK, filming a bunch of historic places and stuff, and then going to Paris, filming a bunch of historic places and stuff, to make more content for the channel, a much wider range of content, so that way I'm not always just talking about Disneyland or ships. So, the thing is that, excuse me, that was an oat in my throat. Those hobnobs are good, but they're dangerous. Those oats, they get just stuck in my windpipe. Okay, so, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so I want to go to the UK trip, but the problem is, I don't earn that much money. So saving up for something like that is like pennies and pennies every month. And it takes forever. And to go to the UK is going to cost like $9,000. I just can't do it. So, in order to make the process faster, I realize if I go somewhere much closer to me and much cheaper to visit, then I can make a bunch of content about that place and then use that content to help me to save up money for the UK trip much, much faster. Because I can make a ton of content. So, one of the most historic cities in the US, probably because it's one of the oldest, is New Orleans. And there's a lot of history there. Lots of really cool places and things to film and create content about. I literally have a list on my phone, and it's just getting longer and longer every day of things that I can film and do there, so that way I can create content for the channel. So, and a trip to New Orleans is it's like half the price if I were to take a trip from here down to the Queen Mary. I'm not even kidding. A trip to New Orleans for a week is cheaper than spending, like, it's half the price of spending a week at the Queen Mary. So I'm like, okay, I can film a lot of content down there. So, yeah, so I'll be going to New Orleans in a matter of months. Let's hope they don't have a hurricane or something that devastates the area, because that would just be terrible. I heard we're going to have a bad hurricane season this year. Which figures, because soon after I made the decision to go to New Orleans, that's when I get weather reports like, oh, the hurricane season's going to be terrible this year. So, let's hope that doesn't happen. Yeah. And so I'm already like, I'm halfway saved up for the New Orleans trip. So I'm going to do that and make a bunch of content and use the ad revenue to go to the UK and finally complete that trip, which I've been telling people about for years. So yeah. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I heard traffic was used in Dunkirk. Alright, so... yeah. So, some interesting things that I wanted to film in New Orleans. Let's see. Well, I found out yesterday that there's this Irish American museum, which is kind of cool because I'm part Irish. So I'd like to see that museum. And, let's see. There's also the plantations. So I wanted to make a video or two about plantation life and what it was like for the slaves that had to live on the plantations. And, you know, and show people what these plantations are. Because when you talk about the plantations, you're either remembering something from a movie or you're thinking about Oak Alley Plantation, which is a famous plantation in just outside of New Orleans. But there's other plantations around it that have a more surreal experience. Or I shouldn't even say surreal, realistic experience, actually. They have, like, there's this one, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I have it in my list. And you can, like, walk around and see the actual slave houses where they lived. And there are statues of the slaves all over the property. It's eerie, of course, because there's statues everywhere, but it's eerie because they represent actual people that lived there and had to deal with it. So it'll be interesting to make those videos. And then, on a lighter note, there's going to be stuff about New Orleans itself, the streetcar system, how it works, how long it's been around, you know. Then there's the architecture. There's the... there's a few houses there that are, like, supposedly haunted and stuff like that. I want to make Halloween-themed videos about these haunted houses. I definitely want to see the Ursuline Convent. I made a video about that already, and I'm obsessed with going there. I gotta see it. And then the French Market, that's got a history of its own. Just on and on and on. There's a whole bunch of places. There's a museum where it's a townhouse on Royal Street, and it's still fully furnished as it was in the 1800s. And I'd love to see that, you know, because you go to a lot of the buildings in the French Quarter, and on the outside they're still historic and old looking, but on the inside they're very modern looking because people have renovated the interiors over and over and over again. But this one townhouse, at least the one I know of, still retains all its original furnishings and interiors. And so it'll be like stepping back in time. And I want to make a video about that. Vlogging videos, food reviews, all kinds of stuff. Just everything to celebrate the city. Because, you know, even though it's got a really dark history, it's a wonderful city today. It's just absolutely really cool. And there's so much history, including jazz and stuff like that. Oh, and we plan to take a ride aboard the Natchez. It's a real steam-powered riverboat. So that'll be really cool. Lots of really neat stuff. Sheridan says, can you travel in the off-season, like October? It could be cheaper, and there will be no hurricanes near New Orleans. I will be traveling off-season in October, so... I chose October for that very purpose. It'll be cheaper to go, and there shouldn't be very much chance for a hurricane at that time. So, but yeah, so most of the traveling I plan to do will be in the off seasons, just to make things cheaper, you know, because my friend and I, Chris and I, we're very frugal when it comes to spending, especially if we're going traveling and stuff like that. We don't want to, like, eat only McDonald's and stuff, of course. Like, we're not going to, like, save money that way. But we're not going to eat at, like, fancy restaurants. We're definitely not going to go partying and drinking. That's definitely not my style. I can't even hold down a cup of coffee, let alone a drink. So Definitely not going for partying or anything like that. I'm not even the party kind of person. I mean, look at me. I'm sitting here drinking a cup of tea with my biscuits and shortbread. So, you know, yeah, our plans are to keep everything as cost efficient as possible while still being able to experience everything. Oh, and I want to take. They have the carriage rides around the French Quarter. Now, I know some people will say, "Well, Alex, that's kind of like a tourist trap. Like they charge a lot of money for the carriage ride, and and stuff like that. And you could learn all the same information elsewhere," which I totally understand. That's a good point. But I love the mules and the carriages, and I want to be on the carriage ride because it will feel like you're back in time, just experiencing the French Quarter as it was. And plus, I can film the whole thing, and it'll be very interesting for viewers. I think people would love to see a video like that, because I've looked all over YouTube. Like, before I make videos, I look up videos on YouTube that might be similar, and I decide, is it worth doing my video if someone else has done something better? But all the videos of carriage rides on the internet are either filmed very poorly or they're edited very poorly, and there's not very many of them to begin with. So I'm like, if I film a really good version, I think people would love to see it. And then they don't have to pay I think it's like $30 to $60 per person to do the carriage ride. Yeah. So we'll see. I also have to convince Chris to do something like that, because he'll be like, "What? $30 for a carriage ride?" But yeah. Oh yeah, Justin, I spent like a good half hour talking about the SS United States. Or at least it felt like half an hour. But yeah. The freight. Oh, Five Caps Film says, "Do you like any of the freight railroads here in the U.S.? I mean, like paint schemes and stuff, not business practices." Paint schemes. I never thought about paint schemes much. I'm really only a fan of steam locomotives and trains from the early to late 1800s. So I'm not really a fan of railroads or trains from the 20th century or even the modern 21st century. So yeah, I'm very particular about trains. But yeah. Here in Oregon, we've had some interesting railroads in the past. We don't have them today. Like there was one, the Rogue River Valley Railway. That's an interesting story. I wanted to make a video about that at one point, but I don't have enough stuff to make the video, if that makes any sense. There's not enough images to make a video out of it. So, yeah. Tom says, "If you go to New Orleans, go for the World War II Museum. They have a fully restored PT boat. Took a trip on this boat. It's definitely a bucket list item. You will not regret it." Oh, believe me, we're gonna see the World War II Museum. That's the number one thing that Chris said. He says, "If we're going to New Orleans, we're going to see the World War II Museum." I said, "I have no arguments there. I would love to see the World War II Museum to learn more about it, because, I often talk about World War II on the peripheral on my channel. I talk about the Queen Mary, which was involved in World War II. And I talk about other ships and things that were involved in World War II. But I think, ultimately, I can't say I know a lot about World War II. And so I think the museum will be very helpful for me to learn all that stuff. And plus, I heard it was a really great museum. Like, it was huge, and there was a lot to see. Someone said that they spent 2 days at the museum because there wasn't, they couldn't do it all in one day. So, definitely going to see that. Gregory, about the ocean liners on TV shows. If it's a story that jumps off the page and captures my imagination and I think it's absolutely fascinating, then I'll make a video about it. But if it isn't that fascinating, if I can't find anything that I think is super duper interesting about it, I probably won't make the video. So I was just telling people earlier, I made a video about SS Nomadic and I wasn't crazy about it, and the video turned out not what I expected because it just wasn't, my heart wasn't in it. So if it's something that, if it's any subject or any story in history that really captures my fascination and my imagination, then I'll definitely make a video about it. Oh yeah, John, I've heard of, Charleston, South Carolina. I've heard it's an amazing city for history and stuff like that. That'd probably be another place I'd like to go. Oh yeah, Tom. Yeah, I've heard about the French Quarter streets at night, the quiet ones. Yeah, it's gonna be tough because there are some things I want to film in the evenings. But that being said, I've already told my friend Chris, I was like, when we're in New Orleans, we're really only going to be active while the sun is up. I said because, you know, I don't want to be caught outside at night and, you know, be completely helpless. You know, so definitely we're going to do most everything during the daytime. I want to do video walkarounds of the French Quarter because, like I said, I'm obsessed with history, especially of the French Quarter and the architecture. So I want to do like videos where I walk down each of the streets, maybe not all of them, but most of them, and film that and then post those as walk-around videos. But I'm going to have to do those in the daytime and most likely sometime before 10 a.m. because I think after 10 a.m. the French Quarter starts to wake up. Especially around noon it wakes up. That's from what I understand. But then, like, I wanted to do an evening walk around as well. But I have to think carefully about that because I'm like, if I'm going to walk around in the evening, I'd be very careful where I'm walking because, you know, like any city, you can walk quickly into a dangerous part of the neighborhood. And the interesting thing about the French Quarter, it's both positive and negative, is that the French Quarter is the original part of the city. It's the original city within the city. And as such, the little neighborhoods of the French Quarter have their own, like, personalities, you know? And so, like, you know, some of them are bad areas in the French Quarter. They're like mini bad areas to be. And so, so it's going to be interesting. I like the little microeconomics of the French Quarter. So, let's see. Blackpool Junction says, will you do a video for British steam locomotives? I'd like to. If we go to the UK at a time when they're still running a lot of the heritage railroads, I'm definitely going to go to as many of them as I can, as many of them as I can fit in the trip, and then take footage of it so that way I can make videos about them. But yeah, that depends, because we also want to try to keep the trip as cheap as possible at the same time, and usually that means going during off seasons for travel. So we'll have to balance it out and see where we go, because we also don't want to go necessarily in the winter, because if the roads are icy, we might slip about and, you know, break our cameras and stuff. So we have to definitely think very carefully on what time of year we're going to be going to the UK. But hopefully it's around a time when they're still running the heritage railroads, because I really want to see some of that stuff. So, oh, Five Cast Home says, when you go to New Orleans, are you going to cross the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway very long? I don't think we're even going to go anywhere near the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway because we're not going to rent a car when we go there. It's too expensive, and they say that if you rent a car, your car's going to get damaged, and then the the renter place will charge you money for it. So it's often not recommended to rent a car when you go to New Orleans. That's like a lot of travel people say that. So we're not going to do that. We're going to use public transit to get places. And so because of that, we have no reason to go to the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. So, yeah. Pretty much. Foxster says, do you think the ocean liners will make a return? I think it's sad that not many ships are up today except for cruises. I actually have a whole video about that, and I can explain all that in the video. So that video would be, what's it called? I'm pretty sure it's called The Return of Ocean Liners. Will ocean liners return? If you go to my videos list, the tab on my channel says videos, there's a video, and the image on it is the Queen Mary 2, and that's the video. And it was only made like weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago. So, and it should be very much somewhere on that list, not too far down. There's a whole video based on that that opinion. Hey Ken, how's it going? Man, those oats, they're just stuck in my throat. There we go. Back for more. Okay. Yeah, Tom. Well, I'll think about it, because mostly the trip to New Orleans is for filming historic places, so I can make content about it. So there won't be much time for doing just fun things, you know, just for fun. Like the World War II Museum, that's going to be for our education, you know, part of our leisurely time. But yeah, we'll see what we have time for. And because Ubering all the way to Lake Pontchartrain could cost a lot of money. So we'll see. Five Caps Film says, why are ships' funnels tilted backwards? It's part of the aerodynamics. It helps the smoke to rise up out of the funnel. If the funnel was perfectly level, what would happen is the air passing over it would actually force the smoke back down into the ship, if that makes any sense. So by tilting the funnels back, the air actually creates a vortex right above the funnel and then goes out into the air. So by tilting the funnels back, it allows the smoke to escape properly. But if the funnels are perfectly flat, the smoke would just actually be forced down back into the ship. Oh no, the dust and smoke will get onto the stern regardless. It was up to the ship to make sure that the boilers were burning as clean as possible to prevent that from happening. But you can't stop, you know, the soot and stuff from raining down just by, you know, the shape or position of the funnels. Oh, well, you answered why they're tall. Okay, yeah. I'm trying to think about anything else about funnels that I could tell you. And it's interesting because Queen Mary's funnels, the forward one is the tallest, the middle one is the middle size, and the last one is the smallest. And they came up with that design because I think they wanted to avoid getting the funnels behind the first one dirty with soot and smoke. So by slowly like decreasing their height as you go along, it helped to prevent that. So it's kind of a little interesting fun fact. And then Queen Mary's funnels were held upright with the use of funnel stays or stay ropes. And the stay ropes were, bolted to various areas of the upper decks. But Queen Elizabeth, they eliminated the stay ropes by creating more robust funnels that had an internal skeleton structure that kept them upright. So just another little fun fact. Yeah, there is something strange about the Titanic funnels because they're not all the same height, but they come up to the same height. So there is something interesting because I measured the middle funnels. They are shorter than the forward funnel and the last funnel. Or actually, the forward funnel is the shortest, the last funnel is the tallest. But they all come up to the same height. So it's really weird. I don't know how that works. When I built this model, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking, wait, shouldn't the tallest funnel be first? But the instructions said to put it at the very back. So I was very confused about it. Alright, well, this live stream has gone on for an hour and 45 minutes. I think I'm going to get going now. I'm going to finish these off camera and finish my tea as well. And I have to do research for next week's video. I hope I can do next week's video. All depends if I can get enough images to show people. But yeah, so anyway, folks, I'm going to get going. And anything I needed to tell you guys? I don't think so. But yeah, so thank you all so much for joining me. I swear my wrist will get better. Happy Father's Day tomorrow. And yeah, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.